Barnaby Buttercup was, by trade and temperament, a curmudgeon. As the official autumnal colorist for the Whispering Woods, it was his job to coax the greens of summer into the fiery reds, burnt oranges, and brilliant golds of fall. And he was usually very good at it. This year, however, was a catastrophe. He stood before his grand oak workbench, located in the hollow of a centuries-old stump, and scowled at his palette of clay pots. The pot labeled Crimson Blight was full. The ochre sigh was brimming. But the most important one, the pot for Gilded Sunlight, was nearly empty. A faint, sad dusting of gold was all that remained. "Impossible," he muttered, his bushy white beard quivering with indignation. "Utterly impossible. The sun was just as sunny this summer as any other. The flowers were just as flowery. Where has all the dust gone?" He prodded the bottom of the pot with a twig. It came up clean. Without Gilded Sunlight, the maples would be a dull brown, the aspens a sickly yellow. Autumn would be a drab, washed-out affair. It would be an embarrassment. "Having trouble, Mr. Barnaby?" a cheerful voice chirped from above. Barnaby craned his neck. Perched on a mushroom shelf near the entrance of his stump home was Pip, a red squirrel with a tail twice as fluffy as his body and an optimism that bordered on infuriating. He was clutching a prized acorn. "It is a matter of artisanal chemistry. Far too complex for the nut-addled mind of a squirrel," Barnaby grumped, turning back to his empty pot. "It concerns the precise hue saturation of deciduous foliage." "You're out of yellow?" Pip asked, scampering down a route to the workshop floor. Barnaby sighed, a sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "It is not yellow, you furry simpleton. It is Gilded Sunlight. It is the captured laughter of the last day of summer, the warmth of the harvest moon, the part. It's the final, crucial ingredient, and it's gone." Pip tilted his head, his black eyes bright with curiosity. "Gone, but there's always more where it comes from, isn't there?" From the sun-kissed meadow, Barnaby froze. He slowly turned to face the squirrel. "The sun-kissed meadow, that's a nursery tale. A myth told to saplings to get them to grow straight. There's no such place." "Of course there is," Pip insisted, dropping his acorn in his excitement. "It rolled under the workbench. My great-great-grand-uncle once found it. He said the flowers there don't just catch the sun, they hold it, they shimmer even at night. He said it's past the crooked creek and through the Briar-Patch Maze." Barnaby stroked his beard, a flicker of an ancient memory stirring within him. His own grandfather, a far less grumpy gnome, had spoken of such a place. He had dismissed it as fanciful nonsense. But now, desperation was a powerful motivator. "Nonsense and poppycock," he declared, though with slightly less conviction. "Even if this mythical meadow existed, it would be impossible to reach before the first frost, which is due in 3 days. Not if we're fast." Pip squeaked, his tail twitching. "I'm very fast. And you? Well, you have very determined-looking boots. We can do it, for the honor of autumn." Barnaby looked from the squirrel's earnest face to his tragically empty pot. The thought of a lackluster autumn was more terrifying than any Briar-Patch Maze. With a groan that seemed to shake the very roots of his home, he relented. "Fine," he grumbled. "But I'm packing the supplies, and if we get eaten by a grumpy badger, I'm blaming your great-great-granduncle." Their journey began under a sky the color of a faded periwinkle. Pip darted ahead, a flash of red fur against the mossy greens and deep browns of the forest floor, while Barnaby followed at a more measured, grumbling pace. They crossed the crooked creek by shimmying over a fallen log that was slick with moss and secrets. "Are you certain this is the way?" Barnaby called out as Pip vanished into a thicket of ferns. "Positive," Pip's voice echoed back. "I can smell it. It smells like honey and warm stones." Barnaby sniffed the air. All he could smell was damp earth and his own rising skepticism. The Briar-Patch Maze was next, a tangled, thorny labyrinth that snagged at Barnaby's pointed hat and tugged at his tunic. Pip, however, navigated it with ease, slipping through gaps and running along the tops of the thorny branches. "Watch out for the snapper-thorns on the left," Pip shouted. "They're a bit grabby today." Barnaby grumbled and painstakingly detangled his sleeve from a vine, all the while composing a mental list of complaints he would deliver to Pip once this fool's errand was over. Yet, as they delved deeper, he couldn't deny the air was changing. It was growing warmer, sweeter. The scent Pip had described, honey and warm stones, was becoming undeniable. After what felt like an eternity of thorns and grumbling, they emerged from the maze and stopped dead. Before them lay a hidden clearing, a perfect circle cupped in the palm of the ancient woods. It was the Sun-Kissed Meadow. It was more beautiful than any myth could describe. The clearing was filled with millions of tiny, bell-shaped flowers, their petals the color of spun gold. They weren't just yellow. They pulsed with a soft, internal light, as if each bloom had swallowed a tiny star. The air hummed with a gentle energy, and floating above the blossoms was a shimmering haze of the finest, most radiant golden dust Barnaby had ever seen. "See," Pip whispered, his voice filled with awe. "I told you." For the first time all day, Barnaby was speechless. He slowly walked into the meadow, his boots sinking slightly into the soft turf. He reached out a trembling hand and gently touched one of the flowers. A puff of luminous dust transferred to his fingertip, glowing with a warmth that seeped into his very bones. "It's real," he breathed. He pulled a large, empty leather pouch from his belt. "Well, don't just stand there gawking, Squirrel. We have an autumn to save." For the next hour, they worked together. Pip, light and nimble, scampered among the flowers, gently shaking the blossoms so the gilded sunlight dust rained down into Barnaby's waiting pouch. Barnaby, with his expert eye, directed him to the most potent blooms, the ones that held the heart of the afternoon sun. The grumpy gnome found himself chuckling as Pip sneezed, sending a glittering cloud into the air. The cheerful squirrel chattered about his acorn collection, and Barnaby, to his own surprise, found himself telling a story about the time he accidentally painted a whole grove of birch trees purple as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the meadow. Their pouch was heavy and glowing. Barnaby held it up. It felt warm, alive. "We did it," Pip said, beaming. Barnaby nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "We did it," he corrected, realizing that even curmudgeons could use a friend. "I suppose I could use a permanent assistant. The title is Chief Procurement Officer for Luminescent Particles. The job is mostly helping me find lost things and reminding me that meadows can be magical. Are you interested?" Pip's tail fluffed up to twice its normal size. "Am I ever?" So, the grumpy gnome and the optimistic squirrel stood side by side, watching over the most beautiful autumn the woods had ever known. A season painted not just with color, but with the gold of a new and unlikely friendship.